We talk movies.
Hello and welcome to a watch-along of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, with the hosts of Jedi Alliance. I am one of your hosts. My name is Joseph Scrimshaw, and this is, of course...
one of your other hosts, the Internet Soapbox, Mark Donica. How you guys doing?
So we have already done watch-alongs of Episodes 1 through 3, so here we are at the original trilogy. We are going to be watching what I think of as the Specialist Edition, the most recent version of Episode 4, New Hope. Like many things in Star Wars, the various editions of the classic trilogy are, of course, controversial. But we decided, since there's so many different versions with minor tweaks, why not just watch the most recent thing? This is the current Blu-ray.
The only Blu-ray.
Yeah, the only Blu-ray. So the current Blu-ray.
I guess the only legal Blu-ray, maybe.
Yes, the only legal.
Yeah.
Because I have some other Blu-rays that I won't speak about or tell you where I got. It was in an alley.
Yep.
So we already discussed the prequels. The prequels are very controversial, so we spent a lot of time kind of talking through, like, what do we like? What don't we like? How does it work? Why doesn't it work? The classic trilogy is very beloved, but
Yes.
I kind of like to look at it in the same way of, like, trying to look at it with fresh eyes of what's good, what's weird, what's, maybe bad, what do we like about the special edition, what don't we like?
It's the special edition part that I think is going to be the most interesting.
Yeah.
Because I recently went back and watched my my VHSs, the last VHSs before the special editions came out.
Yeah.
So seeing everything through that lens, and now coming back and seeing it through this lens, I think will be very interesting.
Yeah, and I also want to kind of watch it with the lens of how do we understand them differently because we watched the prequels and
so
accepted
recently.
them. Yeah. So I also want to do real quick. We do this every time. What is your experience of watching this film? When did you first see it?
I mean, as a child, my most vivid memories are of watching Return of the Jedi, not this one, but I know I watched this one a lot because back when I had my my actual brain, my current brain, I do remember watching it and knowing it and remembering it, even so that probably wasn't my first time watching it. So I probably started watching this from a very young age.
Yeah. I have a few this movie memories.
Yeah, very
But this
few.
is one of my very early memories. Everything before this is just sort of dark and boring and sad, and then life opened up for me when I saw this movie. So this movie is like this is like watching a part of my DNA on the screen, which is very weird.
And you know this movie backwards and forwards.
Yes.
So we will try not to quote this as much as possible. we will do it here and there so that you can properly sync up. We also have our timer in the corner, just so that you can follow along at home. Again, we are watching the most current Blu-ray. I'm ready to get started if you are.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to do it on go. I'm going to count down and I'm going to say go. So in 3, 2, 1, go.
Star Wars.
It worked. Thank God. Okay.
So, like many people, I became very attached to the 20th Century Fox fanfare going into the Lucasfilm logo.
It's important.
Yeah, and I'm excited to. I know that they're not going to do anything else before it, but I'm excited to see kind of how they get into if it's just going to be a quiet screen or if there's going to be some new little bit of thing for The Force Awakens.
If they're going to make if John Williams, beautiful.
Yeah.
If John Williams is going to make like a new cue for the intro.
Yeah.
To lead up to this tag.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Because I think it is served well by that nice build-up. I think one of the fascinating things of trying to watch this movie from a sort of fresh perspective is how many risks were taken and how nobody making this, knew that it was going to be a thing that two dudes would be sitting on a couch talking about over the internet 40 years later.
Let alone probably several dudes across the internet and ladies. Let's be fair. I totally agree with that. This was one of the best cases of art through adversity that there ever has been, and George pushed so hard. This was his. Well, I mean, this wasn't his ultimate vision. This version that we're watching is probably closer to his ultimate vision. But it's amazing to the personality and the humanity of the production comes through, and despite it being this space adventure like from thousands of years ago, this connects with so many people on the most basic levels.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating to think about, like, we'll get into it in particular, but, like, sometimes people criticize Mark Hamill's performance, and it is one of the things that gives me the greatest geek rage that I feel so strongly about, that a mostly unknown actor doing a weird space movie, basically alone in Tunisia. He kills it. He does just an amazing job as an actor,
I agree.
think. And especially just, looking at it from a different perspective of he doesn't have the weight of Star Wars to carry. He's just doing a good job on a weird space movie.
Yeah, he's trying to evoke what he feels the character should feel, and it does come across. And if you go through his first couple of appearances in this movie to the last scene, or even just Vader and he in the turbo lift,
Yeah.
And just the vast difference and the growth of that character from this little wimpy 19-year-old kid on a weird desert planet to Jedi Knight,
all-powerful
and Master.
Jedi Knight. Yeah. And so we just saw the long tracking shot of the Star Destroyer, and there's been a lot of commentary about how they needed to nail that shot in special effects to sell it. And I even remember, as an incredibly tiny child, I had already watched like Star Trek on TV or seen some other random old space stuff, and the idea. I don't want to lose the idea that that's a part of the huge initial success of Star Wars, is that it looked not only so aesthetically cool, but realistic space
real.
stuff. It was a B movie that didn't look like a B movie.
Like that, you don't see the string that's holding that ship up.
Yeah, like even the way the shadow moves over the model, just like
Mm-hmm.
the innovation in the model work, I think is a huge part of the story of why Star Wars became such a big deal.
Mhm.
Because, I think generations always loved this kind of space fantasy and this battle of good and evil, but to have it look so believable that you can immerse yourself in it, I think is part of what made people go crazy and come back to the theater again and again in 1977.
Yes, 100% agree with you on that one. And stakes immediately.
Yeah,
Like war immediately.
Yeah, and to give the stormtroopers props, they just took out a lot of dudes.
Yeah, a couple of them went down, but not
Yeah.
as much as the plain-clothed rebels.
Yeah, maybe a couple of the rebels are just faking it. They're lying
Maybe.
down to. But there was another good stormtrooper hit. You go, stormtroopers.
Dude, I guess I never really thought about how many people go down just so frequently in this scene.
Yeah. So, Mark, when you first saw it, were you young enough that Darth Vader scared you?
Totally. Like here are these soldiers, all same face. You can't see their face, so that alone is scary too. And then here's this big dude in black, but it was imposing. Just like, what is this character?
Yeah.
And then of course when he's got the dude up by his neck, it's scary. It's supposed to be scary.
Yeah.
But sorry, I was giggling a little bit to myself because there's so many famous. Now that this movie has aged so well, there's so many audio dubs of Darth Vader's lines in this scene.
Yes.
And I was thinking of the one from Coming to America. That's probably my favorite.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, that's great. It's
I'm looking
it's
for
just
my son Akeem.
all other James Earl Jones
Yeah,
dialogue.
so
Yeah. If you
good.
haven't seen that, look that up on the internet. It's great. I think another fascinating thing for me to watch is sort of what lines are legitimately successful and what lines just feel successful because we've quoted them forever and they're a part of our lives now. And it's cool to watch Darth Vader from both the perspective of when it was initially released, and just no real introduction, just catch up on who this dude is. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
He's
This is
terrifying
a-
and imposing. But then coming from the prequels to see where Anakin is now.
Like he's back. He's shouting at people.
Yeah, using his hands instead of the Force to choke people.
Sometimes you just got to get down and dirty with it. He said stunned.
And then he got not
Yeah.
stunned. Yeah, so great that it starts right away with Leia just blasting a stormtrooper.
Mm-hmm. She ain't going down without a fight.
Yeah, it's cool that she's actually the first hero of our triumvirate of heroes that we see. Yeah, one of the things I think is interesting about this section coming up is 3PO and R2 kind of slowly make their way to Luke. Is by 70s space movie standards, Star Wars was just on fire in terms of its tempo. But in comparison to other movies, including other Star Wars movies, this section I think is the only section that is kind of a little bit more taking its time.
Yeah, slow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even call. When I was a kid, I thought it was boring, you know. But that's because I didn't know what film pacing was supposed to be. so now I totally appreciate what they were trying to do and establish with all of that time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I haven't watched the Blu-ray before, and the detail is amazing. Like, you can see the paint strokes on Vader's helmet.
Yeah. I was like, that helmet's been through some stuff.
Yeah, like he's done some touch-up jobs with that. He's got some spray paint out and touched that up.
For the rebellion.
So yeah, and this is again like a great little detail of sort of like when you're just watching it, especially if you start watching it as a little kid and then you get older and you get the sense of some of these little these lines about, oh, there's a Senate, somebody can be a traitor, Leia is clearly a part of the rebellion, but she's trying to hide it, and you get a sense of like, oh, what this government used to be like, and then you come in with the prequel knowledge, and it has a little bit more weight of like, this is the absolute dying gasps
and then
of any sort of government structure.
And even the little bit in Lost Stars that we got of the Imperial banquet on Coruscant for the Senate.
Yeah.
The little bit is like, oh, that's Leia from Alderaan.
Yeah.
And and that's another thing that I'm excited about watching 4, 5, and 6 again, is having that framing of Lost Stars and seeing where all of those characters are.
Right.
So we know that 3PO got wiped in between 3 and 4.
Right.
How hard of a life has he had that he's like, well, we're always suffering?
Yeah, well, so in theory, yeah, he's been with Leia on Alderaan.
Yeah.
Probably doing, just dinner parties and stuff. But, he does have the line about their former owner is Captain Antilles. So maybe he has been bouncing around a bit and he does actually say coming up here when he's talking to Luke that he's, seen some stuff with the rebellion. But I think he's probably had some rough stuff. One hopes not as rough as getting his head cut off and put on a battle droid. I think it's interesting to watch too, in comparison to The Force Awakens, and like I remember from being a kid how much R2 was a sort of entry point for a kid.
Yeah.
Because he was weird and quirky, and he was kind of right, and people didn't listen to him and understand him, and you have real sympathy for him when the Jawas get him coming up here in a bit. And I wonder if BB-8 is going to have some of that same role of like the real empathy, in where like young people can sort of relate to his perspective.
I figure so. The way that they've been showing him in the trailers so far, they're putting him out there as he's on the planet for a reason.
Yeah.
Whether he landed there or was put there.
Yeah, and I think
Anthony Daniels, jeez. Ugh, God, I gotta walk in this damn metal suit.
Yeah, it's the Krayt dragon. This is one of the cool things also about these is like having played through so many video games versions of this. I remember getting extra points for finding the Krayt dragon in many different video games. Yeah, one of the things I do like about this longer opening with R2 and 3PO is I feel like one of the main themes of A New Hope is, that destiny, that the Force will make it so that Luke finds his path, and that these sort of weird little adventures of C-3PO and R2-D2 reinforce that of like they are going to Luke, and they're going to get this thing moving because that is the will of the Force.
Destiny.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And this part is scary. just in general, you see, like you're instantly sort of drawn to R2 as like a fun character, and then he's automatically put in a situation where you're surrounded by glowing eyes, and I mean, it looks shady. People who are creatures that are out to get him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's creepy, like little creepy crawly things if you don't know that they're Jawas yet.
Yeah. And then they shoot him in the face.
Yes. And Star Wars, I think, is single-handedly responsible for inventing one of the largest staples of all 80s film, which is blue lightning.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool effect. It started with the stun ray, which we never see again, as far as I know.
We see it in Clone Wars.
Okay, we see it in Clone
In
Wars,
the
but I mean,
animated
in
series,
4, 5, and 6, we
No, I don't
see
think so.
the circular blue shot.
No, which is really cool. Yeah. And I think that's another fascinating thing about watching A New Hope in particular, but the whole original trilogy. How many of these things were just sort of like late-night decisions made by tired, stressed people trying to get this film done, and now they're like canon. They're a thing. That's the way it's done, and it has been for 40 years because like some tired British dude was just like, I don't know, it's got to be something. How about this?
Case in point, the costumer for Uncle Ben and Uncle Ben. Sorry, I didn't Marvel Movie News thing, but for Ben and Uncle Owen, like they're wearing like desert garb.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily
and
wearing.
That morphs into
every single Jedi wears this stuff.
Jedi, yeah, which is definitely a weird and controversial thing.
Yeah.
I think another thing about this sort of longer adventures of R2-D2 and C-3PO at the beginning is it's weird to watch from the modern perspective because I think from when it was released, it gave people time to sort of marinate in the weird world of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Before just launching into like the whole story. That just really time to just take in. Like, part of this is just aesthetics. Part of this is just eye candy of what a weird, fun, strange world.
And diverse.
Yeah.
And especially when we get to the cantina, it's an automatic establishment of how much variety and how much difference there is in this universe.
Yeah, and Lucas's kind of ongoing interest that he's talked about of sort of the anthropological perspective of Star Wars, of if possible he wants to be able to show like how a world functions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and just that's one of the first things we get to see in Star Wars is sort of like the economy of Tatooine.
Mm-hmm. And just filmmaking in general, if you establish the world and the rules, then once those are established, you can make leaps and steps in different areas.
Yeah.
But since you have all of this background of, oh, don't worry, this is what this world is like, then everybody can accept it a lot easier.
Yeah,
most
absolutely.
movies just say it now. It's like,
right.
Here's what's going to happen, this, and that. Okay, those are the rules, and then they move forward.
Yeah,
but this, taking the time, does so much more.
So yeah, there's a special edition shot. I think that's been fixed up a bit. It's still not amazing CGI on the dewback there.
No, it's all right. It's better. It's the lighting.
But it's certainly been touched up since these came out in '97. Now, did you see the special editions in the theater?
I didn't see all of them in the theater. But I think I may have seen just this one in the theater.
That Sand Trooper or Stormtrooper now, they used to be called Sand Troopers, had a backpack and a little bit of a thing like a flamethrower. I wonder if that has been. I don't know how recently
Glass
that
the planet
has been added, but I mean, I think that there is definitely some retroactive continuity going on in Star Wars, and I think the idea that flame troopers are a thing is something we're supposed to believe, because we're supposed to believe flame troopers torched Brew and Owen. So I think that's a great special edition ad to have somebody who looks like they've got a little flamethrower jetpack on their back. Yeah, I mean, this is amazing to go this far into the movie with this many characters not speaking recognizable English.
Yeah.
No subtitles.
And with still only met one hero.
Yeah.
Though some would argue 3PO and R2 are heroes, blah, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, R2 is certainly, heroic. Yeah, and in terms of the controversial R2 leg jetpacks, I choose to believe in my personal headcanon that it's been a rough go. They just don't work anymore.
Yeah. The parts don't exist. The parts may not exist to make that adjustment, so they converted it into whatever model is current for Astromechs.
Yeah.
Yard sale.
Yeah, man, there is a lot to see in the Blu-ray. This is a movie I've watched a lot of times on a lot of mediums, but like just how kind of dusty and messy the Jawas' robes are,
And how kind of flat some of the paint jobs on the on the set dressing is, but that's kind of cool anyway.
Yeah. And there's a great opening shot of
Oh.
Luke, the establishment of Luke, that he's heading one direction, and then somebody calls him, and he is distracted.
Huh.
So it actually supports the idea of that he needs to kind of turn into a different direction for his destiny, and also what Yoda accuses him of never being focused on any one task.
Yeah. Always looking around for something new to do.
Yeah. Okay, so his Uncle Owen's outfit there is Jedi-esque, but it's not total Jedi.
No. It's a
Jedi
robe
light.
with a brown
It's-
tunic.
It's like really crappy Jedi cosplay.
It's like Jedi bathrobe. You can see the Disneyland logos in it.
Yeah, now 3PO says that his first job is very similar to the language of the Vaporators, Bocce, which that has to be a new memory, so he must have had a different experience that was similar to one of his actual experiences, which is working on these very Vaporators.
Yeah. Could have been what if he went to the desert planet of Jakku? Who knows? Plenty of desert planets around, especially rolling around with Wedge. He probably hit a couple of desert planets on his time.
Yeah, and I think that Captain Antilles, I think this is something Lucas has said at some point, that it's a different Captain Antilles.
Oh, it's not Wedge.
Maybe. I think that's something
Maybe.
that Lucas has said. I would have to look up the actual
Okay.
canon. I'm sure people will comment. So when I was young, this sort of bad motivator, the kind of attitude in story of Luke really wanting to leave home
Mhm.
and have adventures super resonated with me. Was that powerful for you? Was that a powerful part of the movie for you?
I mean, he's one of the most well, not necessarily just likable, but relatable characters. He's living this life that he doesn't really want to do. He's just kind of going along with it, and of course he sees bigger and better things. I 100% what I felt similar to Luke, and there's something better out there for me. I know it, and
Yeah.
and when it comes along, I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take that opportunity and that chance.
Yeah.
And I mean, the music cue doesn't help either. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
hope.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear.
Yeah.
And it's just a fade, not a wipe. So now, watching scenes like this in contrast with the prequel trilogy, like now this is the sort of area of the garage where Anakin confessed to slaughtering people, was jealous of Obi-Wan and angry, and in contrast, Luke is playing with a toy,
He's
thinking about
playing
the
with a
future.
Lambda class Imperial ship.
It's a T-16 Skyhopper.
Oh.
Yeah, it's his Skyhopper. It's a model of his Skyhopper.
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw the 3 and it looked like a Lambda.
Oh,
Yeah.
it absolutely does, yeah. And I only know that from playing video games where I
That's
get to fly
fine.
his Skyhopper. Yeah, I love just little turns of phrase like carbon scoring that just sound like he's so excited about the rebellion.
What a doofus.
And it's fun for me to think about like Luke's perspective of the Empire. Tatooine is a little bit out of the way, but he seems really excited about joining the rebellion
Mm-hmm.
and fighting against the Empire. And it's interesting to think about like, well, why? What makes its way out to Tatooine sort of propaganda-wise?
Because we don't see Tatooine before, or at least in reference to this, we don't see how occupied it is.
Yeah, well, I don't think it is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like this. Like, if they want something there, they come marching through and take care of it. The
It's just
Empire does. But
Kind
I
of a
don't think,
sovereign thing.
yeah. So I think it is difficult to interpret A New Hope as George Lucas intended Luke and Leia to be brother and sister initially, given
Yeah.
Luke's. I mean, that's a fine thing to say about your sibling, that they're beautiful.
But I also fair enough to Luke. He's been living out in the. How often does he really go into town? How many pretty girls are there really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a pretty girl.
Yeah, there's the
Yeah.
extended bits of the script, some that are Luke hanging out with his pals, and there's at least one young woman hanging out, and she's in the novel version. But he probably didn't go on a lot of dates.
No.
I do like that Obi-Wan decided to just take Ben.
Yeah, it's Ben.
Ben's good. Ben's a nice, calm name. I'm not going to change Kenobi, but Ben, that's good.
Obi-Wan's the weird part. I'll leave Kenobi.
But that is just a wonderful thing to accept about Star Wars is, like, no matter how deep in hiding you are, you don't change your last name. Except for Kanan, I guess. Kanan's bucking the trend. I always like the effect of the little lightning bolts on the side of their straining bolt when he pops it off there. Yeah, and it's fun to think also of R2 of like how much he knows, because I choose to believe that R2 has never been wiped, and he knows exactly where he is.
Yeah.
He knows exactly who Luke is, and he, in theory, I would think that he would want Luke to be able to.
Think we're gonna get a confirmation of that in 7? I think that would be an awesome thing for the fans.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so like this scene is obviously there's a million amazing things going on in this scene. I love the performance by these actors as Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. Just their super meaningful, weighty looks, and this is one of the scenes to me that just lines up great emotion-wise with the prequel.
Yeah.
So obviously they weren't having Obi-Wan over for dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's cool like to have scenes like this where like there's sort of this weighty backstory. They're well acted, they're emotional, and then also just as Star Wars fans, one of the biggest things we take out of it is blue milk.
Yeah.
Remember and talk about.
And cleaned up as it is here, it looks kind of like gray milk.
Yeah, there's it looks a little bit like maybe it's a protein shake.
Yeah. So that's not really like to think of this being an idea of the future, even though it's the past, whatever. To this being an idea of the future, we do have those now. Those like oddly colored protein, like I eat 3 of these, and there's chia seeds and all this in it, and that's all. That's my food for the day.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting that that movies can get into your life that way. Of like, I would be more likely to drink protein shakes if I could mix one that looked like the blue milk. That would make me feel better about drinking protein shakes.
I'm kind of surprised. I figure that's something that Disney might jump on.
Yeah, and I've really marveled in more recent years about just the weight of those scenes in the way the characters play them, and it fits. Love the kicking the little rock out of the way.
Never gonna get it out of this
I think it's a great performance because I think it's accurate to how he feels. So, yeah, the staring at the twin sunset, this music cue, like, this is a huge part of just who I am. It's also in the original trilogy, I think, one of the most sort of powerful callbacks between the films when Yoda in Empire Strikes Back accuses him of always looking off and never having his mind on the present. And we're like, yes, we know, because we literally saw him do that.
Several times. And that's another thing about 3PO. His first reaction is, "Don't deactivate me." What has he been doing?
Yeah, and maybe people have been really, really mean to 3PO. I mean, he is a little bit of a hypochondriac. He is paranoid. He is a little neurotic. That's his charm. But maybe it's well earned. You're right.
And that line just there, too dangerous because of all the sand people. And you would think, were those the Jawas or who? Like it.
Oh
leaves
yeah,
it,
like when you first see
yeah, it's
it.
like
Yeah.
what are
What are sand people? Yeah.
why are they dangerous?
Yeah, and I hadn't really ever looked at how many just kind of normal fades in and out in this early part there are, and we don't get into as many wipes until we're switching from locations.
Yeah, we had one good one.
Yeah.
Desert to desert.
Yeah, and Ben Burt makes everything sound interesting. She has some sort of vegetable space Cuisinart, and even that sounds awesome.
It's like, it's a stew pot, but it's a
Yeah.
it's a space stew pot.
Yeah, and it just the incredible dedication of people like Ben Burt working on this movie, just wanting to be good, going like, that space stew pot has got to sound awesome. That's a nice payoff in Phantom Menace of we see them considering shooting, and then in Phantom Menace we finally get to see them actually shoot during the pod race.
Sweet bantha, bro.
Banthas are amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on the very first limb removal in all of Star Wars. 3PO falling down. I like that line, "Sand people," the worst, because in modern terms that sounds very sort of millennial and over the top. Sand people, the worst.
Those guys totally suck. They don't even like Justin Bieber.
Yeah, so like somebody picked the design of what it looks like when you're looking through
Space binoculars.
Yeah, and now that's the way things look in Star Wars and always have.
I still love the
Tusken Raider noise.
Not just the noise, but the reversal of animation.
Oh, on the gaffy stick. Yeah. Clever editing.
It's like, just play that back. We need it for another couple frames.
I am appreciating the detail on Luke's pants because of the Blu-ray. This watch-along is turning into a commercial for the Blu-rays.
You didn't think that it was just that you thought they were just khakis, but they're not.
There's some burlap action. Okay, that I am not a fan of.
No, that was different.
Bordering on the Wilhelm scream. It's fine that it was bigger and ghostly, but it ended with a little bit.
Could have ended with a boogity
screamy.
boogity.
Yeah. Yes.
Make sure he's dead, and then I'll check his pockets. Magic.
Yeah, and so we have to believe that Obi-Wan Kenobi knows exactly who R2-D2 is. I mean, maybe there are a million other astromech droids right now that look like that, but it's hard with the amount of time that we know Obi-Wan spent with R2 that he does not recognize him. Yeah, and so the idea of Ben just sort of hanging out on Tatooine, waiting until, and not forcing it, not taking Luke and training him from youth like the Jedi way was, but just saying, like, I'm going to wait until destiny brings us together. Every encounter he has with Luke, he must be kind of hoping, like, maybe now is the time that it will feel like it is the will of the Force, like it is the time for destiny to move forward. Or maybe at this point he's just getting impatient and thinks Luke's real old enough.
I think now that everything's picking up when it comes to like him being referenced by name and such, now it's like, okay, it's now or never. I have to do it now.
Yeah, but he's starting to unravel. That Luke will start to unravel the past himself.
And seeing, I think one of the reasons why everybody wants to see an older Obi-Wan movie to bridge the gap between 3 or 4 is because he had to go through so much stuff internally as a character and as a man, from relying so heavily on the council and these are the rules and the regulations and everything. Look at what it did to my best friend.
Yeah.
Totally tore him apart, and to where he is now.
Yeah.
And resolute and like maybe not okay with it, but he's come to terms with it and what was his emotional journey between all of that.
Yeah, and I think that would make a great movie. Yay, first limb removal. With Ewan McGregor coming to that acceptance of, I think there could be a great action movie where he's tempted to leave Tatooine, or even does leave Tatooine on a mission, and maybe senses that Luke's in danger, has to rush back and sort of accept this is the reality. This is who I am.
I can never leave.
Yeah,
dude, you're a droid. You got your arm ripped off. You're fine.
He's a little on the melodramatic side. Excellent wipe.
There's a motion wipe.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
What?
Wasn't Thane a navigator on a spice freighter?
I think he was, yeah, from Lost Stars.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, the sheer volume of information in this scene without feeling like an exposition dump is amazing. The aw shucks reaction from Luke. And I feel like everything that Obi-Wan says in this scene, while some of it you have to give some allowance, it tracks with the prequels. Everything he literally says about Anakin, about being a good pilot and a cunning warrior and a good friend, and I thought I could train him as well as Yoda. It doesn't track perfectly, but it also all tracks.
Clone Wars helps.
Yeah.
And that's just a great technical note. We want to give Anthony Daniels a break, so we'll take him out of the suit and we'll just put.
Yeah, and the idea that he can fall asleep. Yeah. And the lightsaber. Yeah, and I like in all the special editions that they've certainly done some stuff with the lightsaber, but the lightsaber effect still does look a little old school.
Yeah.
In it, so I like that Lucas never really went and messed with that. That line has weight. That line is really I can't believe that this is where I am.
And that pause is just excellent. How did my father die?
Yeah. Everything that
Jedi.
Ewan McGregor does in this scene tracks emotionally perfectly with the prequels and with all of the revelations. Ewan McGregor, Alec Guinness. Everything that he does, they've blended in my mind. Everything that he does in this scene, I think, is just sort of note perfect emotionally, which is really, really impressive. It makes me think that Alec Guinness really did approach this in a very accurately way and really tried to make the most sense out of it and make a little bit of a backstory and imagine what is this guy actually thinking?
And from his performance, despite what his reservations might have been, he still adds so much just with his presence.
Oh yeah, such gravitas, and the other actors have said, that his presence made them take it seriously. I saw it's on YouTube, a great interview with Alec Guinness from 77 when it was released. And he talks a little bit about how it was a weird experience and he wasn't sure about some of the dialogue, and that's some of the dialogue he tweaked a little bit with George's permission, which contributes to why some of his lines are great. But then he ends the interview just by saying, it's a great space film. It's about good versus evil. The one thing that I really hope is that people just go enjoy the movie about good and evil. Don't think about it too much. Don't talk about it too much. Just enjoy it. So on one hand, they're like, oh, Alec Guinness, you're so cool. And I'm so sorry.
It's so
we never stop talking about it.
Jargon. You'll see a dude. He'll have a red sword, laser sword. He's the bad guy. Actually, I kind of want to go back now and see if there were any pre-release interviews to see how the actors described this. What was the pitch? One of the things that I like when I interview people about their movies is how can you sell this to a general audience? I want to see how this crew, before Star Wars was anything, how they tried to sell it, if at all existing.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it sort of, from what they've said in various interviews, a lot of it sort of tracks with the kind of the personalities of the actors.
Yeah.
That, Hamill himself was a little bit of a geek already, so he was like, yeah, awesome. And I think Carrie Fisher was, sarcastic and witty And I don't think Harrison Ford was as grumpy yet, but
All right, space boardroom.
yeah. So
Beautiful.
yeah, so this scene works great, and I think has weight from the prequels as well.
The
What do you-
performance is dangerous to your Starfleet commander. He's just so haughty and full of himself.
So do you think so in comparing quality to quality, do you feel like that's like an example of bad line delivery? Had this film been released in 1999 and we were seeing it fresh as the new Star Wars, do you think lines like that would have made people roll their eyes and go, "That's bad delivery. This movie isn't as good as the prequels"?
That's funny. That's just a fun way to frame it. But I think that would be one of the ones that, like, the people like to quote the prequels bad lines, quote unquote bad lines. I think that would be one that would make the list. That's like a power converters. Like that's a similar like vein of just like, dude, chill.
Yeah.
But also that fits to his character.
Yeah.
So.
Now, a ton of these guys, so these were just like British actors, you know, and especially in the 70s, just like a British actor that, you know, they would do episode after episode of Doctor Who and other space and science fiction shows. So it's cool to think from them that was just sort of like, oh, I'm going to do an episode of Doctor Who, I'll get shot by Dalek, and then I'll bop over to Star Wars, and I'll say some other spacey lines. And, you know, and Doctor Who certainly has some melodrama, so it's not surprising that some of these actors kind of go for it.
Yeah. A lot of ham in this room. Really? One of my favorite lines was just said, the power to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force.
Yeah.
Flippin' love that line.
You know, in terms of the new canon, it's really establishing that the Force is sort of being erased from the galaxy. People are kind of the Empire's kind of trying to sell that it's made up, that, you know, it barely ever happened. Jedi are kind of a myth. And that Vader is the only one who's just out and loud and proud. And that scene is great for that in that new context. And you understand more why the other Imperials are like, you know, it's like in the real world if everybody was like, well, we were just moving on, but this one guy won't stop talking about Scientology and that it gives him superpowers.
Yeah.
And there's that sort of, like, that it makes Vader's character interesting because people are afraid of him, and he's also out of step. So, like, we're terrified of you. You choke us and kill us on a whim, and you won't shut up about this thing that's kind of out of step with the way we're perceiving the galaxy.
Would you like to take a personality test? I have to get a midichlorian reading. Oof.
And Alec Guinness just had the it's too
dangerous.
accurate for a Stormtroopers comment
Yeah.
that has launched many a meme and joke.
Like it's so. That shot is just one of the most real things in this entire movie.
Yeah.
Like it's torch. There's no special effect. It's literally just fire.
Yep.
And smoke.
Just burned
and
to bits.
Skeletons.
And then for a kid's space movie about good and evil, this is pretty nasty.
Yeah. Like, oh, they were burned alive, and you can still kind of see their blood.
Yep. See their blood in Blu-ray. Yeah, and that his reaction there is so great. So many emotions. So there's been the fan theory that this was actually the work of Boba Fett, and I feel like that's being squashed with the Flame Troopers being introduced into canon.
I've actually never heard that theory.
Oh, really?
That it was Boba Fett.
Yeah, well, it's because the theory is based on he has a flamethrower.
Well,
we've never
seen him use.
I'm pretty sure he did, like in comic books and whatnot.
But I mean, in the film.
In the film, no. We see Jango use it, but in the prequels.
And he's got it in battle.
But yeah, I like the flame trooper being introduced in canon. There's the mind probe that we use for our segment.
Which you can do, Facebook.com/Jedi Alliance.
So I think that's a thing that would be laughed at if it were not in the context of this film that we love. Like, it's so many other things in this film are like so great and inventive, and like, oh man, it's a space ball with a syringe. Is she gonna do?
I'm gonna get you with truth, sir.
She's getting her flu shot.
R2 staring at fire. It's like, dude, this fire is pretty sweet.
But I so my process of growing up with this film, I related so much to Luke. I wanted the excuse to like leave the boring life and have the exciting life. And then as I got older, I realized like, oh, but the price of this fun and excitement is every parent figure you ever have being slaughtered.
Yeah.
And that sort of the guilt of it. Obi-Wan has to be so happy to hear that.
Yeah. Finally, jeez.
Here's coming up one of the most classic lines, I think. Wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Unless you live in the San Fernando Valley.
Yeah, so these are back to some 1997 shots. This is a shot that offended a lot of people coming up here. Where I like this shot.
Yeah, this shot's cool. You get an establishment.
Yeah, it's a
of
nice
city.
angle. You get to see a little bit more of Mos Eisley. It's the shot coming up here where everything kind of walks very flat in front of the screen, which is just sort of traditional vaudeville language of comedy. That sort of flat walk across the screen.
Space car.
Another version of a land speeder, I believe.
R2 chillin'. Gonk droid, get out of the way.
Come on, yeah, I think it's that shot, the big old Ronto butt.
Yeah.
And then it's the flat.
Get out of the way.
Flat pass across the screen is a bit much for my 2 cents. So like this, the mind trick. Did Alec Guinness just say like it feels like I should do that one hand wave? And he doesn't even do it. He just does it the first time. He doesn't do it with every line. But now it is canon. It is a thing. You must do the thing.
Yeah.
And that's to me is
just a
just
choice.
fascinating, of just these little choices that just snowball into a big thing.
That's what you're seeing with all of these franchises.
Yeah, and there R2 is getting up in not the most elegant way, so we know his rockets don't work. I'm also having fun watching A New Hope, wondering how much the structure of The Force Awakens is going to mirror it.
Yeah, I mean, so far it looks like it'll probably have a lot of the same elements.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from what we've seen of the first act, not to devolve too much into Force Awakens talk, because we do plenty of that, that it's going to have that sort of like chance meeting of fate of characters. So yeah, the cantina scene predicted some things. There's lots of creatures in here who are vaping, very clearly vaping.
We see the severed heads of IG-88 behind the bar.
Yeah, before he was IG-88, he was just part of the bar.
Satan, of course.
Yeah, and some jizz wailing. What the music is actually called, if you don't know, is jizz wailing.
Mm-hmm.
Character's name is Bo Shrek, I believe. I have an action figure of him because I have a problem. And the droid detection unit. Yeah, so I mean, this was, I think for a lot of people, this scene was the one that they talked about, because just for as much as Lucas was upset that this scene wasn't as alien as he wanted, this is just freakishly alien. You just didn't see this many different weird creatures.
And there's plenty of humanoid-ish characters, but like he's really the only character, and Luke and Ben are really the only characters that are super humanoid.
Yeah, woo hair. And I don't know if I've ever looked up if it is anywhere in canon what Luke is drinking, what just kind of came out of that vat of space alcohol. But I would love to know.
Probably somewhere in the script.
Yeah, so again, like just a few second shots of Hammerhead, or Momo Nadun is his canon name, and a Thorian, and then we go on, and those races are important in Star Wars lore. Oh.
Ponda Baba.
Yep.
Like you. I don't like you either.
And I've always liked the line with Dr. Evazan here of like, is he just horribly scarred, or was he a different kind of alien humanoid?
Yeah.
Or is he just that messed up?
He looks Looks like there was a wholesale on that Twilight Zone episode with
yes,
pig people.
With the turned up noise. And I do like that is compressed Jedi philosophy. Obi-Wan says, please, no, let's talk this out. Let me buy you a drink.
No,
they say
all right.
no. And he says, okay, well, I'm going to use this for defense.
Fair game.
Vaping.
Space hookah turned into vaping.
Yeah, and you have to think that, like, Obi-Wan knows, like, okay, everything's going to get moving now. I am going to come out of hiding because I'm with Luke. Using a lightsaber, even in an outer rim planet, he knows is super calling attention to himself.
Yeah.
From the perspective of the, having everything else we know from the prequels and other expanded fiction. It's an appreciative audience at the cantina. They applaud nicely. I've always liked that.
Wait, has that always been in there?
Yeah, that's always
okay.
been
Good.
There.
Hey.
Yeah, he just radiates cool and charm.
This ship. And also ruined pronunciation of the word falcon for people.
That's one of the things I really like about the original trilogy, and I think it crops up other places, but I like that the characters sometimes just pronounce things differently because it does make it feel real.
Sounds cool.
Like Lando calls him Han.
Yeah.
And I think we hear both Falcon and Falcon.
We do.
At different points. Yeah, now we get to see Obi-Wan Kenobi interacting with other people. His character really matches up with the Obi-Wan we meet in the prequels and in the Clone Wars.
The negotiator.
He's the negotiator, a little bit bemused, a little bit devious, a little bit like he wants to be patient and calm, but he also kind of doesn't have time for BS.
Yes.
And he's sort of just like, oh, son, I know every bit of your BS, Han Solo.
I'm not getting any younger.
Yeah. Look at that.
You're not getting
That's a great animated GIF eye roll. Being very patient with Luke. It's fun to think of also like how weighty this emotion is for Obi-Wan to be hanging out with Luke. Not only that he's been his guardian forever, but he had this relationship with Anakin, and he failed Anakin. And like, how much does he see Anakin in Luke? How much does he see like Luke is a much nicer guy,
but
has had a
still
calmer
is
life,
impatient.
yeah, but still has the impatience and is still a little cocky, but is still just clearly just far more relaxed and kind.
Yeah, that I like having that framing of that relationship.
Okay, so the most controversial of the special edition moments coming up here.
Oh,
with
that's
the
right. We're going to
interaction
see
with
that
Greedo.
scene.
And I believe it has changed multiple times. It was, of course, that Han shot not first, but only. Then it was Greedo shot first. Then it was they shot at the same time, and
Let's
I
see which
think
version it
it's
is.
still at they shoot at the same time. This is something that I really hope that Force Awakens does, is longer conversations with subtitles. That would be really cool.
What? I mean, there's the thing that Farscape did where everybody got like a translator just injected to them so everybody spoke the same language.
Yeah.
But if you didn't have one of those, you would hear all of the languages talking at each other.
Yeah.
So this helps frame the world to where maybe everybody can understand different languages.
Yeah.
But
I've always loved that he picks at the wall to kind of distract Greedo.
Yeah.
His eye. I think there are many scenes in this to give George Lucas, with all the abuse he piles on, just credit for really well-directed scenes. In like that, like those little touches, like they picking at the wall. Yeah, that's at this point. That's sort of like Greedo shoots also, but it was almost angled like his aim was way off because he was getting shot. That was really fast.
It was, but also you're distracted from the edit of Han's head moving out of the way,
Yeah.
post-productionally, kind of poorly. So.
Yeah, and that's been in the other special editions, but that happened a little faster. I like that. Yeah, and this the whole thing. It's an interesting thing to consider the Force of like. It's fine that Vader kind of doesn't recognize Leia. Is similar to Padme or is possibly his daughter, but now he's spending intimate time with her, torturing her in some way. Even if it's just that he's observing the mind probe, torturing her. In other expanded fiction that's now Legends, there's a lot of talk of exactly what went on in there. Leia talks about it a lot in the Splinter of the Mind's Eye book, which is Legends now. But I think in terms of like how Vader's being portrayed in new canon, that he is trying to shut off that I was Anakin Skywalker, but I'm just ignoring all those emotions. Like, to me, that's a little bit of a sort of patch for why he doesn't respond to Leia at all.
Yeah. It's like just because she looks like Padme, like I need to no, stop.
Yeah, maybe
stop.
Maybe that's something that's me even more like she looks like Padme. I'm shutting any emotion down, any reaching out with the Force down even more.
Yeah. And just embrace the hate.
Yeah. Always like this weird little alien, Garandan. So another controversial scene here, and we'll see how if they fixed it up a bit, of Han stepping on Jabba's tail. Yeah, the stepping on Jabba's tail is a little goony, but there's plenty of goony humor in A New Hope. I do like Boba Fett being present because he comes to be such a big part of the whole Star Wars saga. I like putting him in a little bit earlier.
And it shows the relationship with Jabba as to why he would go to Jabba with Solo.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, still not a huge fan. And it is weird how up in Jabba's business Han is.
Well, I mean, and that's kind of a fault of the original scene.
Well, there's the human actor there that they replaced with the actual Jabba.
Yeah.
So he still must have been pretty close to the guy, but not like literally like my abdomen to your abdomen.
Well, he was a bigger dude, but he wasn't Jabba big. So it's hard when an actor has to make choices based on the actor that he sees.
Oh yeah, well of course.
When we don't.
Of course.
So that I think that also creates a different kind of disconnect. But I think if that scene was made like they wanted it to be in the first place, that it'd be an all right scene.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of the tail step, and we don't get a ton of information. Like, maybe the most information we get out of that scene is that Han and Jabba's relationship is still a little civil right now.
Yeah.
They can try to talk it out. I've never really just concentrated on Alec Guinness's face, and he is so not impressed with the Millennium Falcon. Great take from Harrison Ford. Yeah, and I think a lot of those little takes that just really tell us who the characters are through little choices. How much of it was George Lucas's direction? How much of it was the actors just doing a great job, or the younger actors being influenced by Alec Guinness? But I think sometimes when people criticize the prequels, I think it's a little bit of that. Those great moments of sort of character building in tiny moments.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have that in spades in The Force Awakens.
I agree with that. Also, do you think we're going to get a lot of the stormtrooper side approach? Because I just know it's several times now, whenever they burst into a room or on the scene, they're always like kind of looking out their side eye, just like, don't shoot me, don't shoot me, don't shoot me.
Yeah, maybe that was just the best way to see out of the helmets practically.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So that would be cool if they continued that. Yeah,
Two buttons.
Yeah, it's also interesting. We've been talking so much on the show about all of what backstory is going to be explained in The Force Awakens, what you need to see, and thinking about seeing this movie fresh in 1977, almost like every other line is something that you can extrapolate what it means, but it's not explicit to you at all.
Especially with the, because it's almost borrowed language.
Yeah.
Because Star Trek was around for a little. It had been around.
Yeah.
So you can kind of like, it's a version of this or it's a version of that, but it's made so much like the clarity is there now.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to see all of the stuff, all the promotional materials to try to sell this concept. And now we're in a world where literally the entire world wants to see a movie
Yeah.
about space bears.
Yeah, and it's interesting to just see how culture has changed. That like we're not as accepting of not knowing things. We as fans want to know and memorize. Like we want to know what every little thing is, and you know, this first movie is a little bit more just like, it's light speed in hyperspace, and we make calculations on, you know, he doesn't say nav computer, you know, but that in the time past we've memorized all those things. And I hope Force Awakens has some stuff like that that's just like, here's a term, deal with it. We'll figure it out later.
So how early in the shooting schedule do you think this scene between Tarkin and Leia was?
I think it was in the middle because they did Tunisia first, and then they did this stuff on the studios in England.
Okay.
And, of course, the famous story that he is wearing bunny slippers because there weren't any shots of his feet, and he found it much more comfortable that way.
But I mean, but especially because of her heavy accent in this scene.
Yes, and you can find plenty of places of Carrie Fisher talking about that, of feeling like she was trying to be regal, and sometimes it came out that way.
Yeah.
And also, she's in England and surrounded by people
I do the
with
same thing.
Proper British accents.
I would do the same thing.
You would start talking in space British.
It's usually where I am, like when in Rome.
There's a nice regal R rolling. Yeah, I think a really fascinating thing about watching Star Wars again, too, watching A New Hope in particular, is we've talked a little bit about on the show, the new canon and everything kind of prequels forward is introducing us to sort of a very complicated, morally gray galaxy. And a lot of awful things happen in Star Wars, but everybody still walked out of the theater feeling like we just saw a fun romp about good and evil, not just an entire planet was obliterated. And it's interesting to just watch how the film tells you, like, here's an event that happened, but don't think about it in, like, really real terms. The film doesn't ask us to think about it in really real terms.
So having that scene after all of the space battle and the aliens and everything takes you out of that real world sense that you should be like they destroyed a planet.
Right. We should clearly care about these characters that we're seeing in front of us that we're meeting and knowing, but it's not asking us to imagine the absolute horror of everybody on Alderaan dying. It's just that's a really evil thing that the bad guys do, and the good guys are going to beat them. Yay!
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's talked about in Chris Taylor's book, how Star Wars conquered the universe, how last minute this holochess or Dejeric add-in was, and how thrilled Lucas was that he managed to get that done. Yeah.
Who did the stop motion work?
I believe it was Phil Tippett.
Okay.
I might have that wrong, and I'm sure people will happily correct me if I do.
Well, Tippett was he worked on Jurassic Park later. So I know he's in the field.
Right, he's the guy, the dinosaur supervisor, right?
Yeah. Like, you weren't there.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to me that, like, Luke's saber, you know, it looks closer to how it did. It's you know, the more old school rotoscoping where it's vibrating. It's not as clearly bluish. I know some people have been upset in different iterations that it looks a little more green than blue. And it's interesting to me that with all of these touch-ups that Lucas hasn't gone through and made it look perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So Han's attitude here obviously has even more resonance now that we know he's going to be the guy who does believe in the Force.
It's all true.
And tells everybody about it. Smash cut. It's all true. I have wondered what the practical function of this shield is. Like, how you generally use it. He says you can't
So maybe, I have an idea. Maybe if you're by like a sun or like a solar
Yeah.
body or something like that, you set in coordinates, but you put that over so that you don't stare directly into the hot body.
Okay, so you're in your ship, you know where things are. It's not like you're wandering around the planet.
No, you're just on the control board, like, okay, setting coordinates, whatever. And what it looks like that flips up.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought.
I think Obi-Wan also must be so happy there that he deflected the blast, and like
It's like,
we need to believe that he is so powerful in the Force, like his father was, that he is going to pick up this stuff so fast.
yeah,
And he does. I kind of feel like in my headcanon, Luke is just as powerful in the Force, if not more than Anakin, because he does develop so quickly and with so little guidance.
yeah.
Taking your first step into a larger world, I think, is a great line, and that's one of the ones that I think about in real life every time I actually do something new and try something new. I think of that line.
That's great. That's real poetic.
There's a weird thing with Vader here, I believe, where he stops talking but he keeps gesturing. Yep, right there. Did you see that?
Yep.
Yeah. And it is
I
amazing to think that,
prefer-
like, yeah, the film has those little flaws that just like everything else was so amazing about it, it got away with some of the actual just like, yep, that's a mistake. That's right there on screen.
That's just a dude who likes moving his hand. Empire.
I like that Obi-Wan continues to be wise. I don't know if he actually, has meditated enough to kind of be aware of the Empire, but he just has no doubt, yep, they're that bad. Of course they destroyed it.
And that was, I just realized how, so Ben's been on Tatooine the whole time, and for somebody supposedly, so with the framing of the prequels, a dude who's been on a desert planet for the majority of his life sees a TIE fighter and goes, "That's a short range fighter."
Yeah.
How does he know that unless he's seen some biz?
Yeah,
I like
so yeah, you have to imagine that. Well, it's been put in canon in Lost Stars and other things in particular that the Star Wars galaxy really has media as we know it. It has news reports, it has
Propaganda,
propaganda, and that. So I'm sure he keeps up on things up to a point.
as much as he can.
Then there's our first. I've got a bad feeling about this from Luke, and it's nice that the first one comes from Luke, and you can wonder about it. If I've got a bad feeling about this is a pretty common sense thing to say here, but also maybe a little Force sensitive. Like, does he literally have a feeling, a Force feeling?
His first premonition, baby's first premonition.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that line should get a little bit more recognition at
You
times.
can't win, but there's alternatives to fighting.
Yeah. That
Yeah, it's a nice philosophy, and it matches everything we've learned about Obi-Wan.
Mhm.
It's very, very Obi-Wan of like, it goes back to in Revenge of the Sith when he says, what's our next step? Spring the trap.
Mhm.
Just deal with it. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit during the prequels, as I've been rewatching Clone Wars. One of the traditions I love about Star Wars is that you will always get to spend time with ships landing.
Yeah, so much time. Like, no, you're gonna sit here and you're gonna watch it. Interior shot, exterior shot, close up.
Yeah.
Slowest elevator in the world.
So
Just
that
for 3 soldiers.
this kind of random hole in the middle of the landing bay. When I was a kid and I was utterly obsessed with Star Wars, I would like things more if they had any little connection. And there was a library that we would go to that had a second floor sort of atrium that had that sort of hole cut out.
Mhm.
And I would demand to go to that library because just that little detail was like, it reminds me of the hole in the Death Star on the second floor. I need to go to the Death Star library. And I do think that's a power of these films, regardless of which ones you saw first or how old you are, that it resonates into like just little weird parts of your life.
Yeah. And I like that line from Vader. And that reaction seems to support the I don't want anything to do with Anakin Skywalker. So it's like, it's a presence I've not felt since. Nope, gotta go.
Not talking about it. Yeah. And
Deuces.
yeah, when that tracks too of if Vader is really focusing on hate, he's gotta hate Obi-Wan Kenobi so much. So if his focus is on hate, it's not surprising that he would pick up on his most hated person. Who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him, I've come to love even more, because a lot of things that Obi-Wan Kenobi is saying, he's kind of trying to be wise and instruct someone, and that's just kind of a sick burn on Han Solo. So there's obviously some fisticuffs that they punch these guys. This is one of the mysteries of Star Wars. We hear blaster shots, but the armor that they steal does not have any burn marks on it.
Shoot in between to the Under Armour.
Yeah. Or maybe they missed and just punched.
Or maybe those are the... No, that wasn't the Stormtrooper noise.
Yeah, it could be the Stormtroopers firing. There you go. There you go. I feel like one of the things that people would criticize Star Wars for, if this story came out now, I feel like people would criticize, because I think we're generally just a much more critical society now, would criticize sort of the ease of their moving about in the Death Star, and how quickly they find the things they're looking for in the Death Star. So that line makes it sound like that Obi-Wan does know exactly who R2-D2 is, and that, like, he knows all about this stuff. He used to work inside this organization.
He was my old IT guy.
Yeah. Little PowerPoint from R2-D2. Yeah, and I think Obi-Wan is already accepting when he's leaving here that he must sense that Vader's around and knows that he's not going to get out of there without confronting him, and probably really doesn't want Luke anywhere near Vader.
So you stay as far away from me as possible. I'm gonna do what I do.
Yeah.
And even that sounds like a goodbye.
It really does. Yeah. That'll probably be a meme to cut with that line of "Where did you dig up that old fossil?" to a picture of old Han Solo.
Maybe that'll be one of our callback lines. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, that would definitely be a good callback line. Yeah, so Princess Leia. So there's another strange pronunciation.
And with how many languages 3PO knows, he's got to have all of those grammar protocols. He's got to be saying it right anytime he says somebody's name.
Well, yeah, you would think so. He should be saying it right, yeah, because 3PO really does have the power to actually anybody he wants about grammar.
I like that phrasing. He has the power to excuse me.
Yeah, and I feel like Han Solo's sort of journey in the original trilogy is so well done. And I think one of the things that is legitimately really good, that stands the test of time, that we have this sort of the A plot of Luke's journey through the Force and taking down the Empire, and then the main B plot is Han Solo's moral journey.
Yeah.
and his problems with Jabba the Hutt, and it gets set up so well with him being out for himself.
And do you think that might have been Luke's attempt at trying a mind trick?
Just there?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think like right there, that's an example of like some actual like good humor, like well done humor in classic Star Wars. This line too.
Donk.
Yeah,
You
so
got in my way.
anybody who doesn't think like bits of kind of goony humor and shtick bits is not a part of Star Wars, there you go, right in the first film.
Deal with
Chewbacca roars at the mouse droid, makes him go away, then laughs at him. It looks so cool. Yeah, and whoever just came up with the design of like, hey, the lights should just be like this. They should be kind of long and shouldn't quite match. And now that's going to be a thing that's going to be with us for a long time.
All these old Imperials too.
Yep.
Like I remember seeing a lot of like middle-aged and maybe younger up-and-coming dudes, but I don't recall seeing a whole bunch of older men other than in the boardroom.
No, and it does give you a picture of the Empire as sort of, well, it is entirely controlled by old humans. And a little bit of the speciesism or racism of Palpatine. That you're not seeing any really diversity on the Death Star.
Yeah.
So when you continue to rewatch it, Mark,
Yeah.
what is your what section do you get the most out of? Do you get the most out of the first act on Tatooine, the second act on the Death Star, or the third act of the attack of the Death Star?
I mean, the attack is the culmination of so much from the build-up. So that sort of release of evil is punished, and it also, I mean, for me, that's the Death Star run that you get from Star Tours.
Okay.
So,
yes.
So yeah,
So from your Star Tours filter, yes.
Yeah. Through my Star Tours filter, that I have the most personal recollection from.
Okay.
So
Excellent.
But I do like these Death Star scenes a lot.
Yeah.
The Tatooine part is it's really interesting. It starts at like a breakneck pace of look at all this stuff. It's a war and everybody's fighting and this girl's in trouble and this tall dude's choking a guy and all that. And then it's like, all right, let's slow it down.
Yeah.
And it slowly builds back up to that point.
Yeah.
It's like the first hill of a roller coaster.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and I love how crazy they go in here because it does seem like young people. The nice contrast with Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
This is, I think, the best bit of comedy in all of Star Wars.
How are you?
And the fact that he knows it was bad.
Yeah. He's like, damn it. And I can't help but think of all of the Robot Chicken sketches as we go through this too.
Yeah. And Robot Chicken is great, but for me, nothing's ever going to be better than this actual.
Yeah, the actual dialogue.
The actual dialogue is hilarious because it's just it's coming so honestly from the character of Han Solo that we've already met.
And in terms of honestly from Luke, how like right after he heard that Leia was here, he was like, "What am I gonna say? What am I gonna say to her?" Nailed it. Totally nailed it. Who's Ben Kenobi? I only know of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, this is a very cool wipe. And I like Tarkin's line coming up here. It's weird that you need the Force. Yeah, so that's a really cool thing that it is just that he just straight up calls it a religion and acknowledges that Vader is the only one around from his perspective.
Mhm.
But I also like, from just watching A New Hope, you would wonder how old is Obi-Wan Kenobi? Maybe he's 800 years old. Who knows? It's space. But we know he's like 50.
Yeah.
So I like Vader's line of like, don't underestimate the power of the Force. You can use the Force to live up to 50 years old.
What a concept. We don't like doors as stormtroopers.
Well, why would they?
Doors, how do they work? Let's make it a lot harder on ourselves by blasting through.
Yeah, and I feel like the film in a lot of ways just sort of really starts rocketing to life now that we've got our three heroes together, and they do have just amazing chemistry. I mean, huge props to George Lucas for the casting, not of the individual talents, but the chemistry.
Do you think there were chemistry reads like they have
Yes.
so often now?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
There's some good video you can find on YouTube of different people reading for the roles, and even more sort of complicated, dense George Lucas space dialogue, and he paired them in groups of threes, and this was the three that he wanted together. So it was very, very purposeful.
Excellent. That's good to hear. Somebody has to save our skins.
Yeah, and this is so great. It's how much Leia is just taking charge, and
also just like, dude, I gotta get out of here.
yes, like clearly, anything is better than just standing here, and that's kind of keeps being a consistent thing with Han for the brave guy who's brash. Through these scenes, he keeps complaining like, "This is a bad idea. We should do X." Like, no, I didn't want to do that.
That's
That was
not
a bad
his
idea
idea.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
We probably not head first though.
Head first with a yell is great. Yeah, and here we really start to get into, once we're getting up to like, now we're at the pace where we sort of associate with Star Wars films, where it's like the very serial adventure routes of from one problem to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this when we were watching the prequels. Some of it's definitely for the joy of the actual problem or adventure they're facing, but it's also for like, let's see a little bit of who the characters are how they deal with getting out of this.
And that's that shot just there of the four of them.
Yeah.
I like that framing. That's like classic.
Looking at in concern and stress.
But not necessarily just that, but the like where they are in the shot and the placement of the scene.
Yeah.
Just like, here are our four main characters. Look at them.
Yeah.
Danger. Intrigue. Slimy, gross things.
Yeah, around Halloween we talked about sort of the elements of horror in Star Wars, and I think this is one of the great scenes.
Because that popped up and you're just like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. Yeah, the actual the effect of the Dianoga looks a little dated. But the rest of the way this scene is shot is just sort of classic suspense and set up the tension that there's a problem, and then everything's very still. And definitely some weird things in A New Hope, like just out of the blue, he calls it a gun instead of a blaster.
Yeah. But because that's like common lexicon, I don't think that stands out as much because of how sort of gateway a lot of the regular language or the space, quote unquote, space language is.
Yeah.
I think going the other way doesn't hinder it at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just something I noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like, we're getting this whole adventure in here, but we also get to see like a little bit of Han actually does care a little bit. Like, he's not like, whatever, let's move on. He's like, he wants to get Luke out. He's yelling for him.
There's another one.
I had not picked up that they doubled down on. I've got a bad, there are two bad feelings in A New Hope. But I think another thing that does really make their chemistry work really well is, unlike a lot of films where just one character would be the leader, the smart one, all three of them keep coming up with ideas. They're not always necessarily the right idea, but they're all active in what's going on and coming up with like the ideas.
Active participants of the team.
Yeah.
And you it's a good ensemble.
Yeah, it's not like any one of them is a leader. It's not like a James Bond movie where James Bond would come up with all the ideas because he's James Bond.
Yeah.
And here is, I think, the head smack. Yep.
Duh.
And I think they enhanced the clunk sound because they have embraced that. I don't know if that's true, but it sounded that way to me.
But I also saw him like adjust his helmet.
Adjust, yeah. Must have hurt so much.
Oh, that's smart. Oh.
Yeah.
As long as I don't have to walk through that door anymore.
So yeah, during this part of the filming, Lucas really had to fight to get all the extra shots because the British Union was just like, well, we're done at this time, and then we're done. And just the incredible strength of character that Lucas had to have. I have this incredibly weird vision of what this movie is, and I need these weird shots to make them work. And just imagining the pressure of a bunch of super professional older British dudes, like, we've been doing this for years. You don't need that shot. And Lucas having to say, like, no, I have this vision of this weird space movie, and you don't understand it. Like, that's a lot of strength of character.
And now, supposedly, Daniel Craig is a stormtrooper. So
it all comes full circle, yes. The circle is complete.
R2's sweet sonic screwdriver there.
So what do you think of that line of, one thing's for sure, we're all going to be a lot thinner? I've heard some people call it a bad dad joke and an example of Goonie humor in Star Wars. Do you like that line?
I'm a fan of dad jokes, though. They're stupid, and I acknowledge it's like, that's a dad joke, and that's a dumb joke. But I like it. That sounds like something that's right up Han's alley.
Yeah, he's trying to break the tension. He's still trying to look cool. He's not the kind of guy to lose his cool. Direct, will you shut up to C-3PO? One of the other great traditions.
We've had a couple of problems.
I also hope there's lots of fun telling 3PO to shut up in Force Awakens.
It's just like, why don't you shut up for once? Good for you, 3PO.
That would be a great scene in Force Awakens where 3PO's like, would you like to hear how I got my red up? Shut up, 3PO.
Oh.
Yeah, I always like this. I mean, 3PO's got the good joke about they're dead, but it also seems like it keeps them being such like a fun, youthful team that like they averted this one minor problem, and they're celebrating like they took the whole empire down.
Everything is better now.
Yeah, like, they're just so excited. Like, yeah, we accomplished one small task amidst all of these horrible, impossible tasks, but they're so happy and excited about it.
Oh, young people.
I know coming up, this is a thing that's been changed. The controls used to have English on them, and they have been changed to Urabesh, the Star Wars language. It's another thing I like in the details of the Death Star too, that there are so many open chasms, no guardrails. The Empire's like, let's build this whole space station, but like, no guardrails. We don't care about people's safety. Yeah, all the little takes, all the little reactions are just like perfect for the characters. You know exactly who they are. Luke's little, the way he's like looking around the corners, sort of cautious but sort of curious. That's another like just microsecond image that really sticks in my head. I like this coming up too because it's one of the few times that we hear stormtroopers just chatting. I love that line that he just says. The other guys were telling me about it. It's quite a thing to see. It's such a like boring coworkers office chatter.
It's like, damn it, I'm stationed with Dan again.
Yeah, it sounds like they're just like, hey, did you see The Walking Dead last night?
Yeah.
Yeah. Told
no,
me it was pretty scary last night. Yep.
I fell off after season 5. What's going on?
Yeah, and I like also in the idea of like this is a beat up universe. We keep getting reinforcement that even in a beat up universe, the Millennium Falcon really looks like a piece of crap. So this is a special edition change too, where it's full of stormtroopers. What do you think about that?
I think it still sells the idea, so I don't think it's too big of a change.
Yeah.
Because it's quick. It's lightning quick.
Yeah.
It's not like anything like, oh, they're covering the screen and they're walking across the screen.
Yeah,
it's
there's
like,
no Ronto butt. Yeah.
There's nobody like dancing like in the background. Like, no, it's just there's more of them.
Yeah, and it's amazing to think in the scope of the Star Wars narrative of the 6 films that we have so far, how much A New Hope is just introducing us to the world, introducing us to the characters. And there's certainly really big beats, like the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they do just everybody meets, and they do destroy the Death Star. But so much, Wilhelm scream,
Yeah,
so much of this is just fun adventure. And just
Yeah.
like, here's the world, we're going to play in it for a little while. Like, in comparison to the prequels that have so many narrative points.
This is more like you're going to learn about the characters by how they react to the situation, as opposed to let's learn all about these characters so that when the situation arises, you know how they'll react.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a triumph of characters over plot, because I
Yeah.
mean there is a plot. It's an incredibly well structured plot. For luck, I'll come back to bite you guys in meme world.
Yeah.
But it takes its time and only has a couple of big beats. It's not trying to tell a bunch of different stories. Yeah, he just knows.
I gotta be ready.
So having seen all of the incredibly acrobatic fights of the prequels, how do you feel about this lightsaber battle coming up? Does it distract you?
This, not necessarily. Like I've heard the complaints that it just looks like a couple of old dudes waving sticks at each other,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the prequels inform it even more so,
Mhm.
where it's like we literally fought for hours.
Yeah,
That's not what this is about.
Yeah, that they know each other's moves and that they know they're fighting in a different style. I think as
Yes.
you can headcanon as. You can say like, well, one is a cyborg and one is an older man, but it almost just seems more like these sort of like, why both spin around? We know what we're gonna do.
Mm-hmm. The master.
I feel like everything in their conversation tracks. Darth is, some people have complained about the Darth because it's, we used to interpret that as he's basically saying his first name.
Yeah.
And now we know he's saying sort of like his evil title. It's like calling him General.
But that's not giving. That's him acknowledging I think the order as opposed to him as a person, because he's not calling him. Because if he called him a name, he would call him Anakin.
Yeah. So I like that and I think it kind of works of saying like basically it's just reminding like you let me down
Mm-hmm.
by doing this.
You want to make this choice, then we're gonna live with that choice.
Yeah.
You're not gonna see it, and you'll get no sympathy from me.
Yeah. The one thing that I would never want anybody to attempt to address this, but the one thing that would have been cool to me is just a little bit more anger from Vader, because we know how powerful his anger is,
Yes.
and we get that a little bit in this scene.
But then that again, that goes back to what that fight is about,
Mhm.
because for his mind, he probably just wants to defeat him, not necessarily kill him.
Right. Yeah. So, is there any little bit of fear from Vader? Does Vader feel totally confident of I've had years of hunting down Jedi, and being in charge of the galaxy, and I'm not afraid of this old man? Or is there a little bit of like, what if he cuts my legs off again?
Yes.
But certainly, Vader has wanted to hunt down and get rid of all Jedi, and man, I'm sure does he want to finish it off with Obi-Wan. And I think that comes through in the fight.
And there he is getting distracted again.
Yep.
All right, look, guys, let's get what? Shiny thing?
Yeah, and I wonder if Obi-Wan had some hope to maybe win the battle before this, and only now made this decision.
No, I think that was a conceit.
Yeah.
It's like they're gonna be safe.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, I think it was something that he wanted Vader to see and notice.
Yeah. So I think a couple things. I think it's great that we saw how the lightsaber worked earlier, so that we know when watching that that's not the normal way a lightsaber works.
Yes.
When I saw this very young, I was confused and thought lightsabers made people disappear. And then when I got a little older and saw the arm cut off, I was like, oh, okay. And the line, I'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. I really like it. I think it's forced into the prequels too fast. They should have spent more time on it. But I really like the idea that that is not a normal Jedi or Sith thing to be able to retain your identity within the Force. That's the power that Obi-Wan is referring to. And I think it actually tracks in A New Hope that if Obi-Wan hadn't been there to tell Luke to use the Force, he wouldn't have blown up the Death Star.
Yeah.
And the rebellion would have been over. And he is able to continue guiding Luke. And it is a very much like a light side power to be like, you know what? It's still powerful to be able to reach out and communicate.
I agree. Do you like, or what do you think about Qui-Gon's appearance in Clone Wars when it comes to that?
I like it a lot because it fleshes out the track of that story that Qui-Gon is the one who was interested in the living Force. He was the one who first sort of discovered, like, yes, you can meditate and get this power to retain your identity within the Force. Even
though with that last line, or one of the last lines in Episode 3 being, your old master, he's become one with the Force. And Obi-Wan being so surprised.
Yeah.
Like, even despite all of that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that whole scene in Revenge of the Sith could have been handled a little bit better, but it doesn't bother me too much.
Was that digital shake?
Yeah,
because that didn't look natural.
That is something that might have been added. I can see how that would be a thing that Lucas would want to introduce, since it's been introduced in other Star Wars movies then, of the sort of the modern special effects, like do shaky cam on the special effects so it feels real. But I think some of this is, I know some of this was on set of
Definitely.
Shake Them. That's a great comedy line of the Hear Me Baby Hold Together. It's also interesting just in the growth of this sort of the scale, like we were talking about, of story of like escaping the Death Star, taking out a few ties is a big deal, and they need to be in the gun turret cockpits. And by Return of the Jedi, that's not a big story point. That's not a big scene. Just like the Falcon zips around and blows stuff up, And
especially for Luke, like he just got his first like super adventurous kill, really. Like,
yeah.
Hey, I shot one down. How awesome! I did always like the grid computer.
Yeah, yeah, and it's great to establish for our understanding of that Luke chooses to use the Force in the trench run. And before we see it in the trench run, it's great to establish that sort of like this is how shooting is done. You do it maybe a little bit by feel, but yeah. Hey, at least you kept your arm on this time, 3PO.
He'll be deactivated for sure.
Yeah, I liked that it was Vader's idea. And here we get the kind of the setup of the love triangle in this little scene here, which I really like.
That's funny.
You're such an idiot.
Yeah,
And,
but that's also a great line.
Yeah. But I like that Leia continues to have this sort of the institutional knowledge of, like, she knows the way the Empire actually functions. She's a part of its government, or has been up to this point. I love this conversation coming up between Luke and Han. I've been on record. That's one of my favorite lines in all of Star Wars. It is so earnest and believable, and it fits his character so well. I care.
I care. So what do you think? Hey.
Yeah, so it's great to see the way how much the characters understand one another. Yeah, so we learned so much in that scene. Like, we learned that Han is cocky and that Leia has institutional knowledge. And then we learn that, but Han is a man of the world, and he's playing Luke like a fiddle about his jealousy because he understands that really well. And just like, yeah, there's just, not only is like a fun, well-written scene, but there's just so much character building in it.
And now we kind of have the framing of from stuff like Lost Stars with all of the like Holovins and stuff. Luke probably watched old adventure serials too and wanted to be the hero and get the girl and all of this.
Yeah, and this is scary and upsetting as he loses parent figure after parent figure, but it's what he's always dreamed of being a part of the action, of making a difference. So the scene that we just passed with the sentry holding out the device, what do you think is happening there?
I think it's just a lookout. That's
but
really
what what do you think the device is?
I mean, it could be a messaging thing. We don't see it from the other side.
Like he's IMing.
Yeah. It's just like you Leia ASL, like something. But it seems more like maybe a bio reading, or because if it's something that can scan electrical signals and it doesn't get the tracking beacon.
Yeah.
So that it's got to be something for like messaging. Or hailing, I would suppose, is a better way to put it.
Yeah. It seems like it's maybe like a scanning thing.
And seeing the all of the geography of this place, it makes me think that we're seeing Yavin in the trailers for Force Awakens.
Interesting. I think we're gonna see it in Rogue One for sure. It'd be cool to see it in Force Awakens. It's there are a couple things I really like in this scene. I like that it is basically, an 8-bit PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Not even 8-bit. Is really, really cool. He calls her Leia too. And, if you, in the casting of all of these rebels, how young they are. In Blu-ray, I have seen some acne that I never picked up before from those young rebel pilots. And you'll win an Atari 2600.
Sweet. Yeah, well, you're an ass.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is kind of a jerky thing that Luke will actually to him, but he just says it with such charm and confidence and gusto. Like, no, I can do it. We can do it. It'll be great. Yeah, so this whole thing is cut together really well, but I think the elegance of it's do or die. Yavin's going to be blown up, or the Death Star is going to be blown up. There's a great take from Tarkin too, where he's not entirely confident. He's not as confident as Vader.
Sweet Y-wing shot.
Mm-hmm. And then one of the things I like about this is his reward apparently came in very small bills or coins because he's got a lot to carry.
Dude, there's no checks in space. It's transferred to my Venmo or something.
Yep. Yeah, so for as much as the whole Star Wars saga, or at least the classic trilogy, is Luke's journey, the sort of biggest arc is Han's in A New Hope.
Yeah, because Luke is kind of riding the line of like a film hero, but Han's the unpredictable one, really.
Yeah, I mean Luke's sort of like at the rise in his action. Like he doesn't, none of his sort of beliefs are challenged. Like he steps into a larger world.
Definitely.
So he's changing, but it's not like he has this one specific like conflict that he is overcoming. Whereas that's exactly what's going on with Han, and I had never really looked at it that way of watching the film. In how much is the setup of that's the change, that's the hero who needs to change.
Feel bad for me.
Yeah, and many people have pointed out in recent years that Luke could have been more sensitive to the fact that Leia's whole planet was destroyed.
Yeah.
Instead of just
one guy about
just
my family,
about
my friends.
And this is a scene that has been re-added in the special editions of Big Starklighter, who was originally in a lot more scenes on Tatooine. You'll see a decent amount of these character actors in 80s sitcoms.
Yeah.
They pop up. That guy who was just talking was on Cheers. Yeah, but I like that this edition of special in the special edition of seeing Big like Darklighter, seeing Luke have other connections to people, so that there is more weight when everyone starts dying around him in the Death Star trench run. And that it's not. I guess that's a part where the film does try to tell us it's not just fun and games. Here's some weight or meaning for the characters.
And it's Luke's sobering moment where he's like, "Oh, yay, fun," and then people start blowing up next to him. He's like, "Well."
Yeah, it's
crap.
not going to be as easy as Bullseye and Womp Rats. Some nice Y-wing action. Yeah, and this is all great sort of analog to real life stuff.
Yeah.
Of all of this sort of flight prep.
Kind of want Danger Zone to be playing in the background. A little Top Gun vibe.
I love that as a joke. I'm so glad it's not reality.
Yeah.
And that's another huge thing about A New Hope, that conventional wisdom would have said, like, Lucas, put a disco track in there. That's what's hot. I mean, Lucas had the strength of will to say, like, no,
Sticking to the score.
It needs to feel timeless. It needs to have one of these big orchestral scores like people used to have. And that is, obviously, people talk about the music endlessly. That's a huge part. And again, just a tribute to Lucas's resolve. Because, I mean, Star Wars would not... It survives the haircuts. It would not have aged well with a disco track.
There's a bit of a cleanup.
Yeah, there's a new shot that is added in '97 to show all the ships, and I like it. Oh, Jack Porkins.
Jack Porkins. Now, when you were first seeing this movie, what was your favorite starship? Like now I know it's evolved, but like what was the first thing to be like, oh, that's so cool?
X-wing.
Oh yeah.
So it was my super connection to Luke. I walked through this movie as Luke.
Of course.
So the idea, and the X-wing is almost like a car. Like, oh, he gets his vehicle of freedom where he can do cool things and express himself. And I have an older brother who's 3 years older, and we sort of naturally or sometimes out of necessity divided up favorites.
Okay.
And Luke was my favorite. The X-wing was my favorite. And my brother's favorite was Han. And the Millennium Falcon was his favorite.
Naturally.
I had an X-wing toy. He had the Millennium Falcon. I mean, I could play with the Millennium Falcon if I wanted.
But it was his.
But it was his. Yes.
And similar situation with me. That's funny.
You older brother?
By 3 years.
Oh, wow. And did he have the Millennium Falcon that you could play with?
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and I love that he's cocky, and the first thing he does is overzealous.
turbo lasers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the fact that Vader goes to fly and fight, like when you see the film, it's like, sure, yeah, the bad guy flies. That has so much more weight when you've watched all the prequels and like he loves flying.
Yeah, I get to get back. I get to get my custom tie.
Yeah.
Oh, I love his ship too.
I wish that James Earl Jones would. I don't want it in the movie, but it'd be cool if he recorded a. Now this is, this is pod racing.
I wonder if anybody on the Rebels, like when they have him in to record, it's like, could you just give me?
I'm sure.
Just a really quick, just.
It had so many jokes. Yeah, like Luke's a little confused already because it's not a thing to be expected that a ghost would speak to you.
Who knew? That was such a dramatic shot.
Yeah.
Coming out of the darkness, guys, I've got some bad news.
So Lucas used a lot of old, like World War II footage to cut together exactly what this should be, and I think it really shows because like for such complex shots, for special effects wise, the story and narrative really comes through.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that difference of scale in A New Hope, where a TIE fighter's explosion is almost as large as a planet's explosion,
yes.
Where now it's just sort of a little blip. All of this sort of tactical base that Leia is in is obviously going to be a presence in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
With the Leia poster. It's cool to see that connection.
Do you like how erratic they've made the TIE fighters now? Because you can see in the back window they're shaking a little bit more erratically.
You mean in this?
Yeah, in this version.
Yeah, where they put I think that helps. I think there are a couple times where the new CGI doesn't match up with the style of the older shots.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand the desire to make it a little bit more dynamic and make some of the, like, we just had that very flat shot of the Y-wings.
Yeah.
Mix that in with a little bit more movement. I understand the desire to do that. And speaking of video games, this is a thing I've done thousands of times, literally thousands of times.
I just played this in the Battle Pod.
Oh, cool.
It's one of the coolest things ever.
Yeah, I mean, really early arcade game based on the Trench Run. I really like the Rogue Squadron and Rogue Leader games for GameCube, so I did this a lot.
Mm-hmm. I actually just picked Rogue Squadron 3 back up.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to play that again. It's been so long. But, I mean, with Battlefront coming out so soon, it's like, why bother?
Yeah. Do you know if there will be a Trench Run in Battlefront?
I don't. I know that there are going to be there's going to be vehicle combat, but
Okay.
they haven't fully announced it. They also announced the season pass, so there's going to be more expanded content.
Okay.
But we don't know for sure what it's going to be. Oh, he felt so bad about dying.
Yeah, he's kind of cringing away from it. Probably the actor cringing away from sparks in the little
Probably.
cockpit.
Stay on target.
Yeah, and stay on target is, I think, one of those lines that's, like, it's perfectly efficient for the film, but is one of those lines that is just in culture because we love Star Wars so much, we've watched Star Wars so much, that it naturally pops into people's minds on a daily basis.
That's one of those lines.
When we're so easily distracted.
Triumph? I do like having the knowledge, as you mentioned before, that he was wearing bunny slippers, because that makes him seem so much crazier by the end. If you know he's wearing those slippers. Oh, we're going to evacuate? Why did you do that?
No, I'm not going to run in slippers. Are you nuts?
He's lost his mind.
Yeah, and that's a great little Ben Burt design there, too, to cut back and forth from hearing them in their own ships versus hearing them over the radio in the other X-Wings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think even when it was released, it was clear that, like, this is a fun romp. This is a feel-good movie about good versus evil. We really want our heroes to win, and yet there's still tension.
Yeah.
Even
yeah,
watching it now, and like, of course they're gonna win because that's the way this movie works. It's everything about this movie is telling you they're going to win, but there's still great tension because it's just shot and performed so well. Not gonna make it. So do you find like playing games like this, playing scenes like this, do they make you appreciate it differently? Do they start to take a little bit of the magic away?
Not necessarily. It puts me more into it puts me into the world, which is ultimately what viewers want from their favorite franchises. So, it is a little weird playing as the character. Well, I mean, as Luke, but as it's not as implied that you are Luke, even though you're the one that drops the bombs into the Death Star. It's just it's wish fulfillment. But it's if it's presented well enough, then I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's so much fun, especially with that battle pod. You've got the screen that wraps all the way around you, so it's like you're there. You've got a couple of handles and a why can't I brain?
Joystick?
Joystick, thank you. With all the right buttons. It feels right. There's not a lot of force feedback in like the seat or anything, but it's still just like I'm here. Like it does like the sweeping shot, and you have to take down towers and such. It's
cool.
It's great. It puts you into the scene.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, like I played this a million times in Rogue Squadron to try to get all of like the gold medal in that. And that means you start to do something that's incredibly exciting, that means a lot to you, again and again, to the point of tedium. And I think it is a tribute to the film that even though I can't see the movie now without thinking of all of the hours I did that, I still just enjoy the scene for what it is, even though I think about, like, I've blown that up. I've blown that up. I've run into that. I know how to wiggle my X-Wing so Vader doesn't hit me.
Yeah. And that was something that my fiance and I have just experienced with Disney Infinity. Sorry, that was just really awesome to say because it was probably the first time I've said it in public. Playing Disney Infinity, there's the space battle at the end of the Endor for the Endor section, and we kept losing because we couldn't. The TIE fighters just wouldn't get in the right thing.
Yeah.
But we kept replaying, and it was still fun. And we ended up super strategizing and using call names and this, that, and the other.
Nice.
And it made it. The tedium and the repetition made it more Star Warsy. So
nice.
That's something for the medium.
That's great. So yeah, in the ongoing awfulness of Darth Vader as a father,
Just killed one of his friends.
Killed his best friend. That
No,
guy
to be
was
fair,
my best friend.
Hey man, I just killed my old best friend. I'm gonna save you the trouble. How about that?
Yeah. How do you feel about Vader shooting R2? Do you think just in your head canon, does Vader just not recognize R2 from afar?
It's possible because when we saw the first ride through space, the vacuum kind of took the color away, so he just looks like a black and white astromech.
Yeah,
so it's entirely possible it's just like he just knows if I take out the astromech, he won't have like a guidance system.
Yeah, and he's just trying to take Luke out. But yeah, but certainly, if you watch Clone Wars animated series, there's so much connection between Anakin and R2.
Definitely.
That it has extra weight when you watch Vader ruthlessly shoot R2.
Like, and to think about it, that was something that the Clone Wars folks wanted to get early. That was season one where R2 gets lost and Anakin's like, no, I gotta get him.
And Obi-Wan and everybody else. And then there's a later episode where Mace Windu doesn't understand why Anakin is so attached. He's like, he's my friend. He's reliable. He's always got my back.
It's like, dude, what do we say about attachment?
Yeah. And now the way these beats here are cut right here at the end, and the music, it's so it's just very, very well directed.
Mm-hmm. Very well edited too. And that the seeing the shot, love it. The shot from the cockpit
Yeah.
of the TIE fighter made it so much more sinister and scary.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love any time that
from
they use
inside
that. And then what? That's
Yeah.
one of my favorite sound bites.
What? And I think it was so great in a movie that talked about this sort of mystical force. We got to see a few examples. We see Vader choking. But to see Luke use the Force and see that great special effects shot of it's very, I think it's easy for you to relate to as a person, like that feeling of when you're calm and focused, you can do things that you couldn't normally do, and it makes the Force seem like palpable and real instead of just hand-wavy sci-fi religion.
Yeah, that's probably why midichlorians hit so hard.
Yeah, because people had already made this. People who grew up with the original trilogy had made this connection to it. Of like it's this very relatable thing of everybody can kind of have that sort of centering, that it's mystical and all that. But
yeah,
and I don't think midichlorians ruins that. Just if you don't like them, ignore them.
Exactly.
No problem.
But man, I am not feeling as awesomely and super triumphant and happy that Death Star got blown up now.
After reading Lost Stars,
After
which
reading
really
Lost Stars, man.
humanizes it. But yeah, there's nothing in the film that tells us feel bad. Everybody
No.
we've seen on the Death Star is awful.
It's all
There's
implied.
that great shot of Tarkin. You know, he's even. It's like almost very Shakespearean tragedy of like he's offered to leave and he doesn't take it. He's too confident. And the fact that that's the last shot we see before the Death Star blows up is him sort of contemplating and being obstinate and unmoving. That's a great way to just show us that's what the Empire is they are against change. They are obstinate and unmoving.
I totally agree with you. Seeing Luke show up for the first time here, it's really now okay. He's not a kid anymore.
Yeah, he's in his new world. This is his and I love that Han's version of dressing up is he just buttoned that dirty shirt.
And he cleaned it because it was like yellow, and now
Yeah.
at least it's just like normal tunic color.
Luke's outfit is so awesome.
Pretty.
I think it has a strong relationship to Finn's jacket. And I was so happy when they remade figures in the 90s, the Power of the Force line, that they finally put this action figure out. Because as a kid, I wanted that Luke action figure. I wanted Luke
I want
Metal
that
Getting
jacket.
action figure. The Wink's so much great character.
I can wink too.
You get the sense that they are sort of the kids. They're the sort of the wild ones in this organized structure of the rebellion.
And as a joke, I like thinking of Luke trying to go for a wink and he's like, he's totally
Yeah.
R2's okay.
R2's fixed. Yeah. And everybody is amused by his wobbling. I like to think he's saying, "Repair my jet legs. Repair my jet legs while you're at it."
It's not all about looks; it's about function.
And poor Chewie does not get a medal, but that's fine.
A often parodied shot. Man, what an awesome movie!
Yeah. Yeah, and it could have just been absolutely could have just been that's the story, and you can imagine that that the Empire folded because their big weapon was destroyed. But it's awesome that obviously the story continued, or we would not be sitting on this couch.
To say the least.
But it's really interesting to think of in terms of Force Awakens, and we'll know the answers soon. How much they're going to mirror that sort of feel of J.J. Abrams has said recently, we wanted a movie with a beginning and a middle and an end that feels complete. But how much they're going to mirror, like, are we going to get a shot of people kind of triumphant straight on, the way we have in A New Hope and we have in Jedi and Phantom Menace, all of the movies where people are sort of triumphant.
Do you think that there will be a backlash from the fans because they just made 4 with different characters, or do you think that's what the fans want?
I think that most fans would be very happy. I think if it imitates is not as negative a word as I mean, but I feel if it imitates the bones of A New Hope, it will just feel right, as
Sounds
opposed
good.
to if it, if there are a ton of like dialogue callbacks, or there are a lot of winks and nods to like very specific scenes. I think that will maybe get a little tiresome, but I feel like if it is structured and feels like A New Hope, I think people will be pretty excited about
I can
that.
agree with that because people still walked out of Phantom Menace like, oh, new Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to get that at least, and if It's just a fun movie.
Yeah.
It's a fun movie, and if you want to look into more stuff, you get into that gray area. But it's. Do you want to do round two? Round two, everybody. Do you want to come back through?
Yes, I would be happy to watch it again in Blu-ray and just look at the detail on everybody's pants.
Yeah, seriously.
It's
like Luke's
really-
pants. Been thinking about it for the last hour and a half.
Yeah.
Ever since you brought it up.
Yeah, just the sheer amount of invention in that film is amazing. We'll get into Empire. I'm super looking forward to
Definitely.
watching Empire, and I'm looking forward to having a stop motion animation Phil Tippett. Yep.
There he is.
I'm looking forward to discussing a lot of people feel Empire is the best film. I feel like it is the best film, and I'm looking forward to discussing why, especially since A New Hope is always the one that's put up as the is it A New Hope or Empire that's better?
Exactly.
And watching again, I have such appreciation for A New Hope, particularly from the perspective of this came out of nowhere, and the amount of character and determination of everyone involved that it took to make this happen and create this whole big world.
100%. You're nailed it.
Awesome. So, any final thoughts here before we wrap up?
The getting able to see this so close to watching the prequels again helps me appreciate both sides. And,
Yeah.
and I would recommend it. So I know that we do have fans that have watched along with us, and if you're joining us for the first time on this episode, highly recommend that you go back, watch our watch-alongs with episodes 1, 2, and 3, not just as a promotional purposes,
Yeah.
but we kind of it was more enlightening than necessarily shaming, and it really helped me appreciate all of those movies a little bit more, and I think they all deserve a chance at redemption.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. I think a lot of the Star Wars discussion is always about layers, and I feel like the meat of A New Hope, like the base of A New Hope, is great, and you can sort of pick at some of the surface level details of line delivery or that, but the structure is really good, and I feel like that stands true with the prequels, that a lot of the structure is really interesting and fascinating, and you can pick at the surface as much as you want
I
as
agree.
well. And with that, we will be back to talk all about Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. That will probably be happening in December.
Probably, yeah.
But until then, thank you guys so much for watching. Many Bothans died to bring us this watch-along.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.